All right, I'll have to say that British Steel from Judas Priest, to me, if I had to pick one heavy metal record, British Steel would be the epitome of heavy metal. I could argue with myself all day long and talk about Sabbath or Zeppelin or other bands that came before Priest, but I think what Priest did, and specifically on British Steel, was whatever the last shards of the blues that may have been hanging around, those little shards were completely wiped off. It's the first record to me, if you go chronologically through the history of metal records, but British Steel is the one that just, to me, stands out as the gem, as the one that's just the most pure, crystalline, unadulterated heavy metal, the first one. Because I'll argue with you till the end of time. Well, you know, you could say this one, but there's still a huge blues influence on a lot of that stuff. Whereas to me, British Steel, even the title, I mean, you know, it doesn't get more metal than that record.
Pantera, Far Beyond Driven. Pantera opened my eyes to this whole thing of what metal could be, and I'd never heard anything like them when they came out. And that album is just so over the top, but yet still has hooks, and it's awesome.
Power groove, man.
Yeah, Pantera was absolutely the shit, man.
I'm gonna say Korn, self-titled. Their second record, I guess, '94. Pissed, revamped metal, brought it back to the masses, tuned down, just anger, freaks, love it. That's metal.
Oh, Zeppelin too, because I mean, Jesus, heartbreaker. You know, the songs and the delivery, they're so simple. It's powerful, and it's clean, and it's dirty. You know, I mean, that would do it for me, Zeppelin too, without a doubt. It's just the epitome of drums, bass, guitar, and a singer. You know, the format which we live to this day, and always will.
Well, I think that probably there's lots of great albums. I think it'd be hard to find one better than Back in Black.
This is for both of us, probably our whole band, but I think we've already said it a million times, but Appetite for Destruction.
Yeah.
Because we were very young when it came out, and it really changed my perspective of hard rock. Mm-hmm. And it made, I think, even to this day, like, the fact that the producer is not like one of the bigwig heavyweight producers of that time, and like the way it sounds, like to me it just sounds like it was recorded in a sweaty, you know, it sounds like it was recorded at the Whiskey. Like it just sounds like someone just put a tape recorder up. Mm-hmm. And it's really raw, and I don't really think a lot of metal records, like sometimes when bands are too metal it just gets so sterile. Something about that record just sounds completely live, and it's like, it's not perfect, and that's why I like it. I think that that's part of the thing about hard rock, is that I like when it sounds drunken and sloppy, mm-hmm. Not too sloppy, but just on the edge, you know, and to me that record is like, it symbolizes all that. And you know, you can hear all the influences from before. You hear like the Led Zeppelin, and like the Aerosmith,
right,
AC/DC, but it doesn't sound completely derivative and stolen, you know.
Wow.
One of my favorite albums is Sgt. Pepper's, actually. I know it's not a rock album, but it's one of my favorite albums.
I'd go with that.
It's got that old English thing to it with some real great, like, pushing the boundaries of the future with it, and it's still, to this day, if you put it on, it's like, my God, it's mind-blowing, you know. And what was that, 1969 or something?
Yeah, you know, I mean, you said it right. It was the one album that came out that just blew everybody's heads apart. And you listen to that and you think, God, man, how did they do
you know,
that?
it really don't get much better than that, does it?
How did they even think of that?
A metal album would be Black Sabbath's Black Sabbath, released in 1970, probably the blueprint for every doom-laden heavy metal band that has graced a CD or vinyl ever since.
Megadeth, Rust in Peace, because there's a certain element of just brilliance. At every moment, they're just doing something that you're just like, how the hell did they do that? Or just like, how did they write that? What were like, you think about, what were they thinking when they wrote this, when they played this, and then when they were listening to it, when it was done, they were like, God damn, we are some bad motherfuckers.
Far Beyond Driven, you know, Pantera, just because, I don't know, to me it's just the most, I mean, it was extreme, you know, at a time when bands weren't extreme like that. I mean, when I first heard Phil Anselmo scream like that, it was so extreme. When I first started listening to that, I had to put the record down for a year and come back to it later on.
Painkiller, Judas Priest, because that's fucking all out, total heavy metal. You can't beat it. His voice is absolutely fucking awesome on it, and the drumming, the guitar playing, the sound, it's having it. It's like any kid who's going to actually, like, never heard a metal record in his life, and somebody slaps that on there, and like, they're going to be like, fuck me, what the hell is this? Because when I heard it, I couldn't believe it was the same band.
UFO, no heavy petting. Just track to track to track, great playing, great singing, and such. That's a band that does not get the credit in the United States that they deserve. In the UK, they get a bit more appreciation. In the United States, West Coast, big UFO fans. UFO used to play in Coliseums on the West Coast. But on the East Coast, it'll be theater-sized venues. And too often, you know, I fail to mention the importance of that band to me. When people say, you know, what bands influence you, it's always, you know, Sabbath, AC/DC, Alice Cooper, Led Zeppelin, you know, I give them those three. And I forget that I own, like, every UFO record.
Slayer, Show No Mercy was just the record that really encompassed the beginning of all of heavy metal for me. You know, the first note I heard to the last note to this day, it's just the record that really kind of means heavy metal to me.
It would be Led Zeppelin 4. It's the epitome of everything that a rock guitar player should be able to do with a guitar. You should be able to make it groan with agony and then just sing with pleasure. For solos where you can do things that are melodic and you can hear the solos in your dreams. When you can be walking down the street and the lift in your step is coming from a particular drum beat or something like that. And when the vocals come in and you just know you're in the presence of a rock god.
The album that made me cry when I was young, which is Are You Experienced by Jimi Hendrix. And it may not be considered a heavy metal record, but it's still, I can't tell you how many Fender Stratocasters are sold every year, you know.
Ace of Spades has to be the ultimate kind of a party record for me, really high level. I don't know, it's kind of like audible methamphetamines. Really, really happens for me. It still does. I mean, whenever I take time and work out or do anything in my basement where I don't not sit behind a computer or need to think, that's the record that usually rears its ugly head or does so, let's say, 24 times a year, still to this day. So it's probably the one for me.
No Sleep Till Hammersmith is one of my favourite albums, and I think, you know, one of the greatest metal or rock and roll albums because it's live. It's the only live album in the history of the UK album charts to actually go to #1, and I think it's so important. If I was to tell anyone who'd never heard any Motorhead to go and buy one album, it would be this one. And it's the fact that it is live. The live forum for all of the bands and the whole genre of music that we're discussing is so important. And this album, you could play this album quietly at home and it would still sound loud.
I couldn't pick one. I mean, I really couldn't pick. I could probably pick three. I couldn't pick one because one is so limiting. Within the sphere of my sort of rock and roll music, I could probably pick 3 albums that were important. Are You Experienced? Hendrix. Disraeli, Gears, Cream, and probably Zeppelin too.
What have those records got though?
They've got their own individual stamp of authority. They're totally 100% themselves. They're not hearkening to anybody else, and all totally different, you know. But each one magic, and just as vibrant if you put it on a turntable or a CD player now as they were 30, 35 years ago. They've still got it.
Okay, well, I think the Beatles' White Album. That'll always be probably one of my favourites because you could see that in there they had parts of songs that they just put together and they said, well, we can't just throw that away, but it's not a whole song, is it? No, but it's good just that little bit. You know, that album I play today, I play every day, you know. And my daughter, who's 21, she plays it too. I mean, she loves it.
My favorite album I would take with me on the island is Physical Graffiti, because that's the album which you can see Led Zeppelin on its best. It's no hit on it, but the whole album is a hit.
My favorite album would be Led Zeppelin 4 because it was so inspiring. A band that plays great rock riffs like rock and roll or fantastic ballads like Stairway to Heaven.
My favorite album, the one I would take to the Lonely Island or the Lonely Party, is Electric Ladyland by Jimi Hendrix. I still, when I hear like All Along the Watchtower, on sometimes you even hear it on like classic rock radio today, it blows me away. It is like almost 40 years ago and it sounds amazing. And songs like Voodoo Child or Gypsy Eyes and you know all of them, the whole lot. It's a double album. That's what I would take.
It's not my favorite heavy metal album, but Slayer's Reign in Blood is the album I would play The Martians, just so that they knew what the parts were, how it was all supposed to be, and then they could go out and buy, you know, another 3,000 albums.